Back in 2019, I wanted to be a creator so bad. I was working a job that I hated at the time, and I knew that I could do a lot better. My way out, I figured, was going to be to create videos that would either make people laugh or inspire people or teach people how to do things. And it was going to be mainly centered around my new love at the time, which was backpacking. I had just section hiked the Pacific Crest Trail, and there was nothing more that I wanted in life than to just keep doing that at the time. Fast forward 5 years to right now in 2024, and I made that dream come true for the most part. And I have to tell you right now that there is a big dark side to becoming a creator, and that currently right now where I'm at in 2024 is I'm burnt out. So in today's podcast, I'm going to be going over all the dark sides of becoming a content creator and how I got from where I was in 2019 to where I am now in 2024. Now, one thing I want to say before I get started here was, don't get me wrong, I really am proud of myself for quitting the job that I had, the 9 to 5, and I don't want to go back to that at all. And I definitely know that my life is better now than it was then. However, there's some key things that you have to know that your life is going to change. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off with a part 1, which is going to be 1 to 2 years of being a creator. And then we're going to get into years 3, 4, or 5 of a creator and some of the really bad negatives of being a creator around that time period, which is stuff that I'm going through now. Number 1 would be imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is when you don't feel like you are worthy of posting or talking about the things that you're posting or you're talking about or giving advice on. And you could be totally qualified for this, but the fact remains that you might not have enough credit for yourself in order to feel like you're a legit creator. And I struggled with this for about 1 to 2 years of my career, where I didn't feel like maybe I was the best person to listen to, or people should listen to somebody else more than me, or because somebody had more experience than I was, people should listen to them more. But as you start to get along in your creator journey, you develop more evidence and more positive relations that essentially show you that you are able to do these things fine and you're not an imposter after all. I used to think that I had to thru hike the entire PCT to give any advice about backpacking, for example. And now I know that that's totally not true, especially when you see other creators such as Dan Becker, that is just a day hiker, but he gives a plethora of reviews on backpacking equipment and backpacking gear, and he's got a huge subscriber base. Or Harris Hikers, who's never done a thru hike as well. If you look at these accounts, they broke through that imposter syndrome that they probably had because they were comparing themselves to other people that were further along in whatever hobby that they're talking about, but they were able to break through that. So imposter syndrome you are able to break through it, and you just need more evidence for yourself. And for me, that came from doing thru hikes of the JMT, the Colorado Trail, the Uinta Highline, all these other ones, then running 100 miles and all this type of stuff that I began doing started to break me out of that imposter syndrome to where now, 5 years later, I really don't have too much of that anymore. Next would be negative feedback. Obviously, this is going to come in the form of trolls. And trolls suck. I mean, either way, but especially when you first start out, because you're already dealing with that imposter syndrome of not feeling good enough. So when a troll comes and is basically hammering that into your head, you really start to feel like you don't deserve what it is that you're talking about or the rep that you're gaining. And this negative feedback can really cut deep. I mean, for every 9 positive comments that you get, you're probably going to get 1 that's negative. And this is really hard to wrap your head around when you are just starting to create content, because it's really foreign, because that really doesn't happen in real life. That you don't really have a troll that's trolling you in real life down the street or walking down the road or sidewalk or driving in your car. You don't have that in real life. So trying to deal with it online is really super weird. But again, you are able to break that with time. And the more that it happens, the more that you kind of create this bulletproof armor to where the stuff people say kind of bounce off of you. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't say that sometimes it still does get to me, but nowhere near the amount that it did my first 1 to 2 years of becoming a creator. So those are really the 2 things that happen in phase 1 of becoming a creator, the big drawbacks. Now, in phase 2, which is where is what I'm experiencing right now. And so I'm going to be able to really kind of give you details about this type of stuff because, well, it's just what I'm going through. So number 1 is when you're a creator, you always feel like you have to be creating. What I mean by this is that there is really no days off in your head. When you work for yourself and you create your own business, and a lot of that's content driven, there's always things that you can be doing to create better content, to be more informed about the algorithm, or with content that you've already filmed, you can edit, you can film more, you can do idea generation. It just is a never-ending hamster wheel. And so what I found for myself is that I'll feel stressed about needing to film and edit a video this week, but as soon as that's done, there's something else that I have to do, or something else that I have to work on. So it's just this never-ending thing of you always feel like you have to be on, you always feel like you have to be creating. And this even occurs on the weekends. The nice thing about the weekends working as your own boss is you can use it to get ahead. But again, it's really this infinity lever of how much you want to create and how much is sustainable to you. What this ends up doing is creating a creative block for you because you're going to be doing this so much for years and years and years. And again, it doesn't really happen in the first 1 to 2 years. This is 3 years plus, all these things, especially in phase 2. But once you start riding that hamster wheel for long enough, you start sitting here and thinking, I don't really want to create another piece of content, or I need a break. But the fact is if you take a break, then you're going to be behind. And so it runs off a cascade of things. So I mentioned a creative block. Well, the other thing that when you're a creator that's a big drawback is you feel like you're in a box. So for example, I built my audience on YouTube and Instagram on backpacking. I would argue for Instagram, it's way more about backpacking and hiking. YouTube, I can kind of get away with a little bit more different kind of stuff, but for the most part, Instagram is definitely hiking and backpacking, and YouTube is definitely hiking and mountain climbing. But when you're creating the same content for 5 years, you don't feel like creating another piece of that content for the rest of your life. But you have to, because that's how your audience was brought up. Your audience was brought up with you. That's what they're expecting of you. And that's what you feel like you need to deliver. However, whenever you post something out of the box, you are really disincentivized into doing it. You can do it, but you're disincentivized into doing it because it does not perform as well as what your audience is there for. Now, for example, on Instagram, I can kind of create an Instagram post knowing that it's going to do really well because I understand my audience on there. So the one good thing about posting so long to the same audience is you know what's going to hit and what's not going to hit. The bad thing is that, you feel like you're in a box and that you can't create different content. What I'm kind of trending towards nowadays is getting more into hunting and more in like self-reliance type stuff. And I would love to film videos about that, but I know that it would not perform at all on Instagram. It might perform on YouTube, but again, I think that's kind of a stretch. So that's where I'm kind of at right now. I want to break out of this box. I've also talked to another creator that does a through hiking podcast, and he's done many episodes with through hikers, and he basically said, I want to kind of make a different podcast on something else. I don't really want to keep going with the hikers. And that's kind of why I did my podcast as a hybrid mountain athlete, because I'm very eclectic. I like to split board, I like to rock climb, I like to through hike. I didn't want to just interview through hikers because almost every single episode is the same. I started at Mexico, I ended in Canada. There were some stories in between. I wanted to quit, but I didn't. I had some run-ins with animals. I ran out of food, but then I got to the Canadian border. I mean, it's almost the same thing every single time. And so creative people need an outlet. They need something different. Well, this guy in particular was saying he wanted to do a totally different podcast. Now, the one thing I told him said, well, because you learned all these things with this initial podcast, you can transfer that to other areas. And so this is kind of the same advice that I should give myself, which is if I wanted to create a new channel or if I wanted to create new videos about X, Y, and Z, I would be able to probably do that because of the skills that I have learned while I was in this box. Next is you overanalyze everything that you post. This can lead to that creative block and burnout as well, especially when it comes to YouTube. YouTube, there is such a massive, how would I say it? There's such a massive opportunity cost to when you ideate, film, and edit and then post a YouTube video versus, let's say, an Instagram post. And the reason is because it takes so much longer on YouTube to create these 15-minute videos, 10-minute videos than it does to scroll Instagram, find a trend, film that, and then post it. So especially right now with YouTube, I'm really overanalyzing everything I post, which kind of puts you into this bad area of not posting much at all because you don't want to spend the time because there's not really the ROI that you want to see. Take, for example, my Wonderland Trail that I posted. It's a 15-minute video of my Wonderland Trail documentary, and this took days and days of editing. Not to mention the amount of effort that it took to film the video when I was on the Wonderland Trail. But this took over a week to edit, working on it every single day at some point. This is a 15-minute video. I have 1,400 views on it, and I posted it about a month ago. So I made $12 on it. Now it's not all about money, and I used to do this, especially when I first started, because I love to film and edit videos, and I still do. But the problem is that now you are relying on this as your financial stability. So if something performs poorly, you feel like you just wasted this massive amount of time with no ROI. So that's how I'm starting to feel a little bit with YouTube. So that's why I'm starting to overanalyze everything I post, which is making it so I'm not posting much at all, if that makes sense. The other thing is, to go along with that, is your post is the things that happen when your post doesn't do as well as you thought. Because creators are really inexorably linked to their content and what they post about, and it's really kind of how they identify themselves. If something doesn't do well on your Instagram or YouTube or your TikTok, it flops, you kind of feel that as a reflection of yourself, that you suck. Even though it's just your post that sucked or they didn't like, you feel like you suck. So your identity is wrapped up into your posts and the performances that you can dictate how the algorithm should pick it up, but sometimes it just doesn't pick it up the way that you want it to be, and that's super disappointing and disheartening, and makes you again want to be. It gives you a creative block, and it leads to burnout. Next is that it's difficult to prioritize what things to do when you are going throughout your week. Now, this is probably my biggest thing that I'm struggling with right now. I just bought a house, and I'm super grateful for that. And it's funny because you always feel like once you you always have this goal, and once you feel like you get that goal, you feel like your life is going to be as good as it can ever get, right? But what happens every time you conquer a goal? You just set a new one, and then you think your life's going to be the best after that goal, and then that goal, and that goal. And then, so I'm seeing this with this house right now. And one thing is that this house is because we're kind of renovating it, we're renting out some stuff. It's a lot of work, and I'm trying to decipher whether I should do something on the house versus something with creating. What has the most ROI? That's kind of what I'm doing in my head every day, is what has the most ROI if I spend my time doing it? Because I don't want to do any low value tasks because I'm making money. This is my job. This is my job right now. So I used to, and like I said before earlier in the podcast, I used to do this for fun, and now it's become a job. And so there is truth in the saying, don't make hobby your job or whatever, and that because you're not going to like it. There could be some truth in there. Now, I want to say all of this leads to burnout, which is where I'm at currently in my creator journey at about 5 years in. And I don't want to sound like I'm not grateful for the opportunities that I've gotten with this and leaving my job, because I do that this is the way forward for me. I do want to keep doing this for the rest of my life, but there is some things that I have to change, and a lot of that has to come down to with the phase 2 of what I just said, of the dark side in your creator journey. I have to get better at hitting on all 5 of those things that I talked about there in that section, and I think this is why a lot of creators don't get past probably 5 years and never get to 10 years for sure, because this just gets magnified the more and more that you create. I think the easiest way to get past this is that you have to switch up your content. I think that all of this stuff right here would be great if I just switched up my niche of content right now. I think that, and also if I had a big enough financial cushion that I could go out and I could experiment with some of these things. Now, what Gary Vee always says is, you have 80% of your posts hit for the certain group or the certain audience that you want, because you know that that's going to hit. And 20% you should just kind of be throwing stuff up against the wall to see how it works. So maybe that's another tactic that I can take as well to still make the income that I need, and then also kind of satisfy my creativity bug in a sense. Yeah, there's a lot to it. I just wanted to give you guys an update of where I'm at right now with this creator stuff and having gone full-time creator 2 years ago. So learn from my mistakes. Think about how you can problem solve some of this stuff, because I guarantee 80%, if not 100% of this exact stuff will come up if you are becoming a creator. And yeah, I don't want you guys to go down the path that I'm at right now, even though like I said, I'm still grateful for it. I just do feel a little bit stuck of where I'm at right now. But we'll see what happens in 6 months. Maybe we'll give another 6-month update on this. So be sure to subscribe and like this video. And then, hey, you'll see another update from me in 6 months. We'll see where I'm at. By the way, if you could give a 5-star rating on Spotify if you're listening there, that would be dope, guys. Thank you so much. See you for the next episode.